Empower Radio presents Out of the Fog. Join intuitive guide and spiritual teacher Karen Hager for lively, positive conversation with light workers, healers, and dynamic wisdom keepers. Get ready for inspiration and connection. This is Out of the Fog on Empower Radio. Here's your host, Karen Hager.
Hello and welcome to Out of the Fog. I'm Karen Hager. Each week at this time, we gather for spiritual conversation with enlightening guests, and I'm glad you're here. Listener favorite, okay, my favorite too, Astrologer Dr. Michael Lennox is here to help bring us an overview and maybe some understanding of what's ahead for us astrologically in 2021. It sounds, from what I can gather, like there are some big pieces about instability and about healing occurring at the same time and occurring over and over again that promise to make this a very interesting year astrologically. So let's get him in here. Are you ready to meet him? Psychologist, astrologer, and dream expert Dr. Michael Lennox has been helping people have a deeper understanding of their unconscious mind for almost 25 years. Michael guides people through life's mysteries with a deep and profound wisdom that is delivered through a humorous and extemporaneous style that's become his trademark. Michael's the author of 3 books on dreams, and he leads classes, workshops, and retreats all over the U.S. and conducts a worldwide private practice based in Southern California. He's followed by thousands of people on Facebook, and his hashtag Red Robe Astrology on Instagram offers daily guidance to an enthusiastic social media audience. You can find out more about Michael and his work at michaellennox.com. Michael, welcome back to Out of the Fog.
Oh, it's so great to be here. I love coming and dropping in with you.
I love having you on the show. Usually I have like notes and questions and I've made bullet points. And when you come on the show, it's like a blank piece of paper with a big cartoon heart that says Michael in the middle. So new year, 2020. Not so great. But 2021 is going to be a lot easier, right? We're all going to get kittens and cupcakes and rainbows, right?
No, not on your life. In fact, though I would say that the challenges energetically of 2021 have a kind of, sensation to them that would be difficult, in any sort of world we could make up. Adding what's happening in 2021 on top of what happened in 2020 is how we experience it. So if everything that we knew to be solid and structural and definitive about our life changed last year, because that was certainly what happened out there in the world. And in the world of astrology, we know that by Capricorn, the sign that represents structures of society like governments and borders and science and all of those things that run the world, had the planet of death, Pluto, and reckoning and lessons, Saturn, together in Capricorn. You could consider 2020 to be the year of everything we knew to be solid breaking down and changing forever. So that when we move into 2021, where it's about conflicts and challenges as we seek to build a new world, is going to be difficult because the old world is just still crumbling down and falling apart around us. And now we're charged with trying to figure things out. The energy that Saturn, the teacher, the reckoner, and Uranus, the awakener that wakes us up to higher levels of functioning, they're going to spend the whole year in an argument. So think about your worst teacher ever, the one that gave you the hardest time because maybe he or she knew how smart you were and that you weren't working hard enough. That teacher and lightning are going to be arguing all year next year. And so if I say Saturn, the great teacher, the archetype, the way to understand what this means is, for your listeners, is the teacher within, the part of you that wants to rise up to a higher level of functioning, to know who you are more profoundly, to do life and the difficulty of life better. That's Saturn. Uranus wants us to wake up and be more, well, in the sort of colloquial language, woke. So both of those planets want things for us that we might want, right? We might want to know more, to be wiser, to be a better steward of the human challenge. That's Saturn's job. We might want to be woke to a higher level of awareness. That's Uranus's job. But how that's going to happen in 2021 is through the geometry of conflict, obstacle, and breakdown, the 90-degree square.
When we're faced with conflict, obstacle, and breakdown, we have choices about how do we move forward? To me, sometimes 2020 has felt like I was walking along fine. Somebody dropped a big rock and I'm like, oh, this road's closed. Better go around it. Oh, this road's closed. As we move into the new year, are there more paths around the obstacles because of this awakening that you're talking about?
That's a great question. And I think that both of these planets that are arguing with each other next year in this hard geometry, they're so driven by levels of consciousness, meaning that Saturn, who represents, our life lessons, the person who thinks that life is a lesson and worthy of growing and learning more is going to have a easier time with change and breakdown out there in the world, because you already have a predisposition to say to yourself, what can I learn from this? Same thing with being woken up in grand fashion by flashes of insight, so that if what's happening in the street from these two planets squaring, Saturn the Reckoner and Uranus the Awakener, might be sudden, unexpected issues of violence and reaction and a furtherance of the polarization that rose up in 2020 is going to become like war in the streets in 2021. But who you are going to be in relationship to that is pure choice. Can you look out at a world that's trying to find its way, and in doing so is going to break down and bump up against each other in this polarization, turning itself into like fights and arguments out there in the world? That's an opportunity for the conscious person to say, I will not allow this to move me, but who do I want to be in the face of all of this change? Do I want to be someone who is contributing with consciousness, love, and the possibility of healing, because that's in the mix for next year as well? Or do I want to be the person who's running around saying, this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible, making it worse because you're just contributing chaos to an already chaotic situation?
How can we, when I've been a chaos kind of maker myself. I have run around and gone, this is terrible, we're not going to make it. And then I try to balance that with being calmer and more spiritual. But how can we're in a habit now, it feels to me. And some of this is because of how hard 2020 was. Yeah. But we're in a habit now, an energetic habit of being super reactive. And it feels to me like if there's a gunfight in the streets outside my house between these two forces, it feels to me like I might do better if I'm not reactive, but I'm responsive instead. How can we ride the energy of this year in a way that is responsive, that does help bring us healing?
Golly, if I knew the answer to that in a way that was usable by anyone who heard the answer, I would be the happiest man in the world. Let me say, back to your idea of, don't we have a choice? Let me sort of outline the choice from the energetic perspective. Saturn is the dude who is governing the year's experience for all of us, because he's the one who's involved in these two major transits that we're going to be moving through, where the peak months are February, June, and like late November, early December. In those months, the great teacher is going to be in this argument with the great awakener that's also going to result in all of this instability that we're hinting at, the violence in the streets and the furtherance of polarization. But at the exact same time, Saturn, the teacher, is working with Chiron, the wounded healer, in the 60-degree angle, what's called the sextile. Couple of things you want to know about that is, A, Saturn says, do this hard work because you're a human being and you need to learn and grow. So do that. And Chiron says all wounds can be healed. But the 60-degree angle is an angle of potential. meaning if you don't pick it up and do something with it, it's just laying there like potential. Right? The 60 degrees is, I use the image of that railroad cart thing where two people push that piston up and down from either side of like the seesaw. And then the train cart goes down the tracks. That's what Saturn and Chiron is doing. And the important piece here, Karen, is it's a potential healing with a guarantee of instability. So talk about choice mechanism. So in February and June and December, when the energies are going to be at their heights, all of us will have a choice to make. Am I going to spend an hour on social media falling into the rabbit hole of how bad it is so that I'm generating through the law of cause and effect, my thoughts about how bad it is are creating feelings about how bad it is, and then I'm miserable? Yeah. Or am I going to choose to say, all right, the world has, its movement and trajectory. I'm part of that, but I want to bring the healing. So I'm going to turn off the social media, for the day, and I'm going to spend some time in my garden or in my chair where I meditate, or in my, with my neighbors spreading love, or picking up the phone and email to connect and spread some of that love, as opposed to drinking in all of the chaos only to make yourself miserable. The world is not changing. The world is not going to get any less of these things that it has become, which includes unstable, a little frightening, and filled with a possibility of anything can happen and probably will. Who do you want to be in the face of that? You can't change the tide of transformation that's happening on the planet, but you can certainly join in on those of us who understand how to meet the great challenge and say, what can I bring, instead of how bad is this going to be for me?
You're listening to Out of the Fog, and I'm talking with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find out more about Michael and his work at michaellennox.com. If you follow him on Instagram, where he is Dr. Lennox Dreams. I think that's right, isn't it?
That is correct.
You can find hashtag Red Robe Astrology, where he regales us extemporaneously with astrological musings. That ability to show up, so Red Robe Astrology, that ability to show up the way you do, Michael, to me is the antidote for us all fighting each other for being worried that everything is going wrong. Do you know, is that part of why you do that?
Well, of course is why I do it. Oh my God, that's why I do it. Like another thing I started this year was I started these Thursday night global healing meditations, where once a week on Zoom, I just gather, I talk about what's happening energetically, and then we do a meditation. And man, I did that because I was losing my mind in April and May of last year. So what you're really talking about, Karen, is something that you and I know deeply personally, which is to be of service is the antidote for all that ails us. Now, I may have a life and a work and a business that allows me to be of service in a very definitive way. And someone listening to this might say, well, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an astrologer. I'm not a psychic. I'm not helping people in that way. Service does not demand that it be your job. Service just demands that you live life willing to give and contribute as a way of staying sane and in your heart. So the answer to the question of how to navigate 2021 is find ways to be of service, whatever that looks like in your world.
And it starts with that compassionate look at the part that says, I can't be of service. How would I serve? No, the thing about being of service, it's not so much about what your business is. It's you're here on the planet, in this body, in this form, with these problems at this time, right now, for a reason. And when you are, I see service as like a response to the divine love that's always moving through us, that animates us, that's part of everything.
Yeah.
When we are serving from that place of being a response to divine love, it might mean I smile at somebody out my window.
Absolutely.
And that can be as big an act of service as I don't know, I created the whatever it is that I created.
You don't have to finish the analogy in order for that to be apt and apt. Yes.
We're lucky then, because my analogy ran out. Good. I'm glad, because that analogy just ran out.
Another thing I want to say is that there's a piece of responsibility that people have to take about what their emotional response to the world falling apart has been. Part of what calamity on the planet like this reveals to us is like who we are. And if your response to what's happening out in the world is particularly agitated or fearful or emotionally overwhelming, I promise you, that's not because of COVID or who you wish were president. That's because of traumas you're carrying through life from the traumatic experience of being alive and being in a body and having human beings who parented you and maybe spread some of their pain into the experience of their children, which we then spend our lifetimes trying to heal. So this is something that's a little confronting to take on, but I invite your listeners to say to themselves, my emotional reaction to the world changing is reflecting the unsafety that might live inside of my heart because of my past, because of the ways I might have been raised that were less than nurturing and supportive. And so what might be up for some of us who struggle more is healing work. That you put the outside world on hold a little bit to take this emotional disruption as an opportunity to turn within and heal, whether that's through, a spiritual practice or doing a little therapy or pulling out the journal or turning towards your dreams or any of the ways that we can be with ourselves in an intimate way that helps us heal, wounds of inadequacy and unworthiness and fear that lives in our hearts. What a great opportunity last year and this year will be to do a deeper level of personal healing. Because when, the stuff hits the fan, a healing is possible.
Well, and then it can be done compassionately because there's that kind of pandemic thinking that says, well, it's the pandemic now, you should grow your 6-figure business, write that novel, I don't know, discover a new whatever. And it is, that's not healing.
No, not at all. That's like a demand that, that you be Herculean and rise to something that is not perhaps your mountain to climb. And some people have that experience in 2020, but very few, and should not be the benchmark to which people hold themselves up.
Well, there's a way, I think, in which especially when it's such a reactive thing, we react to rigidity or to those circumstances. I can't get away from this. Oh no, it's my own mortality. Oh no, it's my trauma coming back to bite me in the rear end. Oh no, the stone came down in front of me. There's nowhere I can go. We react to that sometimes with equal rigidity, but in another area. Right. Oh no, the stone came down in front of me. I'd better write a 900-word novel and have it done by Thursday. That's not actually healing. That's not helpful.
No, it's not. That's just one other way inadequacy is showing up as an unrealistic expectation designed to set you up for failure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So one thing certainly is the principle of one day at a time will certainly carry all of us through 2021. Instead of thinking about, well, what does this mean for next week and next month and next, next. Sometimes we just have to, how am I going to get through today? How am I going to move through my experience today, allowing scary feelings, a feeling of instability, a relationship with the world that has gone mad without falling under. And I think that can only be done one day at a time, and on difficult days, sometimes 1 hour at a time. And this is where your spiritual practice has to come in. If you are not in some relationship with your higher self, and in my world, that can look like anything. That can look like a meditation practice, a prayerful practice, a dance practice, to walking around the block practice, any tool that you can pick up that just reminds you that you're in a body and in an experience that is ultimately yours to behold and do with what you will. One day at a time, I think that's how we get through really difficult patches, because we can survive anything for a day. But when we start thinking about how will I do this for 20 days on top of each other, that's a devastating way to live.
Well, we're not living then,
Correct.
Not in a present way. That's a projection, sort of awful, right? That isn't living. So Go ahead.
There was something that's coming up in the year that I think is kind of a hopeful message that I noticed when I was going through the year month to month to month, when I was preparing my big forecast for the year and looking at all of the new moons and full moons for the entire year of 2021. I noticed something very unusual, and that was the planet Venus was lining up to be in direct participation with just about every full and new moon of the year ahead.
Oh.
Which, what I want to say about that is that, well, for one thing, I haven't looked at every single lunation in every single year, so I don't know how wildly unusual this is, but I do look at every lunation and every new moon and full moon throughout the year as we go. And I have never seen so much participation month after month after month after month of the planet of love inside every opportunity to set new intentions in every, which is the new moon, and every opportunity to release what no longer serves us in every full moon. So love is everywhere. In fact, Venus is going to go retrograde at the end of the year, and she went retrograde in May, which means we have 2 Venus retrogrades less than 18 months apart, which is rare. They usually are stretched out over 2 to 3 years apart. What I like about that is a Venus retrograde is a process whereby all of us have an opportunity to enter the retrograde in one sort of state of living in our hearts and learn how to be better givers and receivers of love as a result of the Venus retrograde. Now, this doesn't happen till the end of 2021, but when I sort of look at our beloved Venus and the fact that she's A, participating directly in so many of the lunations, and B, has, if we anthropomorphize her movement, it's as if she's saying, oh boy, that retrograde I did in 2020 wasn't enough. I think I'll dive into the inner spaces one more time in 2021 just to make sure that everybody's ability to tap into the giving and receiving of love will be as, efficient and powerful as possible. So this to me is like the message of hope that says love will lead. And love will heal us even when the world looks like an unloving place. It cannot not be a loving place because that's the nature of consciousness itself. But when it looks unstable and frightening, we imagine that love has left the room. Yeah. And so our job this year is going to be to find the love even when the outside world is reflecting back a less than loving landscape.
Michael, can you let us know how listeners can connect with you for sessions and to find Red Robe Astrology? How can we tap into all the good stuff that you're doing?
Oh, sweet. Absolutely. MichaelLennox.com is certainly the easiest one to remember and to go to. That's my website, and that is certainly where you can book a session for me, with me. And then the Instagram piece, DRLENNOX Dreams, is the home for Red Robe Astrology, though I'm also on Facebook as Dr. Michael Lennox. And those are sort of the three places to tap into what I offer on a regular basis.
Thank you for coming and opening this up in this way. I love the idea that even in a year that sounds like it's got a lot of confrontation in it, there's that, with that natural cycle of the moon, there's that reminder to return to love, and again and again and again. And so I like feeling that, doesn't make it softer, but I like feeling that hope in there.
Yay.
That is Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find out more about Michael and his work at michaellennox.com. You can find him also on Facebook and on Instagram. Check out that Thursday night global healing meditation and all the other good stuff that he is doing in the world. And of course, you're always welcome over at KarenHager.com. That's a great place to find out more about what's coming up next on this radio program and to find out about upcoming classes and events. All my events have gone virtual, obviously, but there's something new almost every month for you to frolic around and delight in. It feels to me like it's really important that we all stay connected as best we can during these very strange times. And if you believe, as I do, that when we focus our attention on peace. We really do become part of creating that peace. If you believe that, please check out openpeacefulheart.com. There are guided meditations there for you to stream any darn time you want to, and you can get information there about the free 15-minute guided meditation call I do once a month with my wife, with the intention of opening up to peace in our hearts and peace in the world. We began this in 2016, just not knowing what was going to happen with Open Peaceful Heart. As this circle has grown to include meditators from all over the world, it's our great privilege to kind of hold the space for that circle, and you are absolutely invited to be with us. Details at openpeacefulheart.com. And thank you for listening today. Together we are spreading a little more light in the world, and a little more light is always a good thing. Until next time, I'm wishing you peace.